2024 hit the world hard, and not just in the ways you'd expect. We're talking about legends who felt untouchable, young stars barely getting started, and icons who shaped entire generations, all gone within the same 12 months. Some of these deaths were drawn-out battles the whole world watched. Others came completely out of nowhere, the kind of news that makes you stop scrolling and just stare at your screen. Today we're remembering 10 of them, their stories, the details that never quite made the headlines, and the legacies they left behind. 1. Liam Payne, 31 years old. There are moments that break the internet, and then there are moments that break a generation. October 16th, 2024 was the latter. Liam Payne, 1/5 of the biggest boy band on the planet, fell from a third-floor balcony at the Casa Sur Palermo Hotel in Buenos Aires, Argentina. He was 31 years old. What makes this story so hard to sit with isn't just the loss, it's the timeline of the hours before. Hotel staff had called emergency services earlier that day, reporting an aggressive man who could be under the influence of drugs or alcohol. He'd apparently smashed his laptop in the lobby and had to be escorted back to his room. According to Argentine journalist Paula Verla, CCTV footage showed Payne may have fainted on the balcony before falling, meaning he may not have even been conscious when it happened. Toxicology results confirmed the presence of alcohol, cocaine, and a prescribed antidepressant in his system. 3 people were eventually charged, including a hotel employee accused of supplying substances during his stay. 5 more were charged by year's end. Payne had spoken publicly about his struggles with alcohol and mental health over the years, but the world still wasn't prepared. The day the news broke, fans gathered outside the hotel by the thousands. His music re-entered charts across the globe. A generation that grew up watching him on The X Factor at 16 was now grieving him at 31. But as heartbreaking as that story is, what happened to the next person on this list had nothing to do with substances or accidents. It was pure, relentless biology, and a fight she refused to lose quietly. 2. Shannen Doherty, 53 years old. Shannen Doherty didn't just play tough characters. She was one. For nearly a decade, she fought stage IV breast cancer with a level of transparency that changed how people talked about illness in Hollywood. She documented surgeries, shaved her head on Instagram surrounded by friends, launched a podcast, recorded episodes days before she passed, and never once asked anyone to feel sorry for her. What a lot of people don't know is that her cancer may have gone undetected longer than it should have, because her management company allegedly failed to pay her health insurance premiums on time, leaving her uninsured during a critical window in 2014 and 2015. By the time the cancer was found, it had already spread further than it might have. She sued. She settled. And she kept working anyway. By 2023, the cancer had reached her brain and her bones. She named her brain tumor Bob and had it surgically removed. In early 2024, she was calling a new treatment a miracle. By July 13th, she was gone. She died at her home in Malibu, surrounded by loved ones and her dog, Bowie. She was 53, and in her final months, she was still recording, still creating, still refusing to be reduced to a diagnosis. Beverly Hills 90,210. Charmed. A legacy that stretched 4 decades. She didn't want to be remembered as the actress who had cancer. She wanted to be remembered as herself, and she should be. The next person on this list didn't fight illness. He simply disappeared from the public eye for years, leaving fans with more questions than answers, right up until the end. 3. Richard Simmons, 76 years old. Richard Simmons was one of the most genuinely beloved figures in American pop culture. Flamboyant, warm, relentlessly encouraging, he made fitness feel accessible at a time when the industry was cold and exclusionary. He wrote letters to fans. He called people personally to check on them. He wept on television because he actually cared. And then, in 2014, he simply vanished. No more public appearances. No explanations. For years, fans and reporters speculated about why. A podcast called Missing Richard Simmons launched in 2017 and became a phenomenon. People genuinely feared something was wrong. His former manager insisted he was fine and just wanted privacy. A housekeeper who'd worked with him for years suggested he was being controlled. The the truth was never fully settled. He died on July 13, 2024, the same day as Shannen Doherty, a coincidence that briefly broke Twitter at the age of 76. His brother confirmed the news and asked fans to celebrate his life rather than mourn it, saying Richard had been excited about upcoming projects and a Broadway musical he was writing. His publicist called him an angel. The decade of silence before his death remains one of Hollywood's more puzzling chapters. He spent years lifting others up and spent his final years largely out of sight. Whatever the full story was, the world lost a genuinely irreplaceable human being. Speaking of irreplaceable, the next name on this list gave voice to two of cinema's most iconic characters, and the world felt the silence when he was gone. 4. James Earl Jones, 93 years old. There are voices, and then there is the voice. James Earl Jones spent decades embodying characters so immense, Darth Vader, Mufasa, Jack Johnson, King Jafar, that it became hard to separate the man from the mythology. He was 93 when he passed on September 9, 2024, but even that fact somehow landed with surprise. He felt eternal. Jones grew up with a stutter so severe he barely spoke for 8 years as a child. He later said it was poetry that helped him find his voice. He would recite it aloud to himself until the words stopped feeling like obstacles. That detail alone should be on every motivational poster ever made. He was inducted into the American Theater Hall of Fame in 1985, earned a Tony and honorary Oscar, and appeared in films spanning 6 decades. Earlier in 2024, he had granted permission for AI to be used to recreate his Darth Vader voice going forward, a decision that sparked conversations across the film industry about legacy, ownership, and what happens to a performer's voice after they're gone. His impact doesn't shrink over time, it compounds. And if James Earl Jones was a voice that defined generations, the next legend on this list was the man behind the music of generations. 5. Quincy Jones, 91 years old. Quincy Jones didn't just produce albums. He produced eras, Thriller, Off the Wall, The Color Purple, We Are the World. The man had a hand in so much of modern music history that listing his credits starts to feel like listing the history of recorded sound itself. He passed peacefully at his home in Bel Air on November 3, 2024, surrounded by family. He was 91. His children released a statement saying it was an incredible loss, but that they celebrated the full and extraordinary life he had lived. Jones survived 2 brain aneurysms in 1974 and was told he might never work again. He produced Thriller 9 years later. He was nominated for 80 Grammy Awards across his lifetime and won 28 records that still stand. He worked with Frank Sinatra, Miles Davis, Ella Fitzgerald, Michael Jackson, and hundreds of others. He wasn't just connected to the music industry. In many ways, he was the music industry. His absence leaves a crater. From a man who shaped the sound of pop culture to an actress who defined its visual language, the next person on this list was a screen legend in every sense of the word. 6. Maggie Smith, 89 years old. 2 Academy Awards, 4 Emmys, a Tony, a career stretching back to the 1950s. Maggie Smith was one of the most decorated performers who ever lived, and somehow still felt underrated because she made it look effortless. She died on September 27, 2024, at the age of 89 in hospital, as confirmed by the BBC. The world's reaction was immediate and global. Harry Potter fans lined up at theme parks to raise their wands in her honor. Downton Abbey viewers flooded social media. Film critics reached for superlatives and came up short. What's often overlooked is just how late in her career some of her most beloved roles came. She was 64 when she first played Professor McGonagall. She was already in her 70s for much of Downton Abbey's run. Her career didn't peak. It just kept going, evolving, staying razor-sharp long after most performers would have stepped back. She was, by most accounts, privately hilarious. Her wit was legendary on set, and she never seemed particularly interested in being a star in the traditional sense. She was interested in the work, and the work was extraordinary. Next, we move from a legend of the screen to a man who was a force on the field, on film, and in the galaxy far, far away. 7. Carl Weathers, 76 years old. Most people know Carl Weathers as Apollo Creed, the charismatic, flashy heavyweight who gave Rocky Balboa his shot at greatness. Others know him as Dylan in Predator, or more recently as Greef Karga in The Mandalorian. What fewer people remember is that before any of that, he was a professional NFL linebacker who played for the Oakland Raiders. Weathers passed on February 1st, 2024, at the age of 76. His family described him as an exceptional human being who lived an extraordinary life. No extensive public details about his cause of death were released beyond that he passed away peacefully. What made Carl Weathers special wasn't just the roles he played, it was the way he played them. Apollo Creed could have been a cartoon villain. Instead, he became one of cinema's great rivals-turned-allies, a character whose death in Rocky IV hit audiences harder than they expected. His return to screens in The Mandalorian introduced him to an entirely new generation, and by all accounts, he loved every second of it. He was the rare performer who made the room bigger just by being in it. And the next name on this list had a career just as sprawling, from Cold War films to dystopian blockbusters, to some of the most acclaimed dramas ever put on screen. 8. Donald Sutherland, 88 years old. Donald Sutherland was one of those actors who appeared in so many films across so many decades that his IMDb page reads like a tour through cinema history. *H. Clute, Don't Look Now, Ordinary People, The Italian Job, The Hunger Games. He was Hawkeye Pierce before anyone knew what that meant, and President Snow when a new generation needed a villain to represent everything corrupt and authoritarian. He died on June 20th, 2024 at 88, following a long illness. His son Kiefer Sutherland announced the news, calling him one of the most important actors in the history of film, and saying he was proud of everything his father had accomplished. The remarkable thing about Sutherland's career is how consistently he chose interesting work over safe work. He was anti-establishment at a time when that cost something in Hollywood. He was bold, physical, political, and deeply committed to craft until the end. He never won a competitive Oscar, a fact that film historians still debate, and was given an honorary one just 2 years before his death. Better late than never, though the industry should have moved faster. From a legend who took on every kind of role to an actor whose story ended in a way no one could have seen coming. Next up is one of the most tragic, infuriating stories of 2024. 9. Johnny Wactor, 37 years old. Johnny Wactor spent years playing Brando Corbin on General Hospital. He was 37 years old, in good health, and by most accounts just getting started. On May 25, 2024, he was killed in Los Angeles when he came across a group of men stealing the catalytic converter from his car. He was shot. He died at the scene. The circumstances were as senseless as they come, a random act of theft that turned fatal in seconds. 3 suspects were eventually arrested and charged with murder. His colleagues at General Hospital were devastated. Fans who'd followed his work for years were left reeling. What made it hit harder was the kind of person those who knew him described. Someone who was warm, grounded, and genuinely enthusiastic about his career. He wasn't embroiled in controversy. He wasn't struggling in the headlines. He was just living his life, and it was taken from him over a car part worth a few $100s. His death was a reminder that some losses don't have dramatic narratives. They're just wrong. And the final name on this list was another young talent gone far too early, someone with their whole career still ahead of them. 10. Chance Perdomo, 27 years old. If you watched Chilling Adventures of Sabrina or the Amazon Prime series Gen V, you know exactly who Chance Perdomo was. Magnetic, emotionally layered, a performer who at 27 had already carved out a reputation for taking on complex, morally challenging characters and making audiences completely unable to look away. He died on March 29, 2024, in a motorcycle accident at just 27 years old. His team confirmed the news, saying his passion for the arts and insatiable appetite for life was felt by all who knew him, and asking for privacy from his family. The circumstances beyond that were kept quiet per his family's wishes. The entertainment world took a collective breath. Cast members from both shows shared tributes. Fans who had watched him grow into one of the most compelling young actors of his generation mourned a career that had barely begun. There is something uniquely painful about losing someone at 27, old enough to have shown you exactly what they were capable of. Young enough that the gap between what was and what could have been is impossible to look at directly. 2024 was a year of enormous loss. Legends who built the industry from the ground up. Fighters who refused to let illness define them. Young talents who were only just finding their footing. And ordinary people, if actors can ever truly be ordinary, who were taken without warning and without reason. What these 10 people had in common wasn't their age, or their cause of death, or the size of their fame. It was impact. The ability to make strangers feel something through a performance, a song, a voice, a story. That's rarer than it looks. And 2024 reminded us again that it doesn't last forever. Take a moment today to go back and watch something they were in. Put on Thriller. Rewatch Rocky. Pull up an old episode of Charmed or 90,210. Let them do what they were best at. They earned it.